Hello, welcome to the Reframing Mindset podcast. We are clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity, practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, now welcome back to the Reframing Mindset podcast. My name is Concert Brooks. This episode we're going to talk about you can make it with your deficiency. Because why this episode came about because you know I remember when I was younger, there was an injury that I got, back in primary school, and it's like that really, I was a perfect attendance person, in primary school. I was really attending every class, so it's like an injury like that really took me off for like 6 months. Really, just it was like, yo, it was scary as hell, bro. Because not because I was out for 6 months, was because that it left I could not walk. I had to relearn how to walk. And it was a very trauma. It's like it's really traumatizing to actually have a skill that you have and have it ripped away from you and you have to learn it from scratch again. It's like it's really traumatizing. And it's traumatizing because you can't really tell if it's coming back, because what happens is that when it happens to you, the professionals, when I was young, the professional can tell that, okay, I'm gonna do this to help you and stuff like that. And when you're younger, you're hearing that, but all you're witnessing is the fact that, yo, I cannot walk. It's like, wow, bro. It's like what happened was that, so eventually that started to, it got better. And what happened was that it got better, and then I started to walk, and I was able to run again. I was able to go back to school and actually play and stuff like that. But what happened is that it's a permanent damage. And what happened was that as I got older, I was able to do a lot of stuff. Like, for example, I went to high school, play basketball, eventually run, do all kind of this athletic stuff. But as I got older, you know, one of the thing is that it was still there. It was still a deficiency. It was like I was not at my best, and over time, it started to kind of get to me. So when it started to get to me, it was like, so it's like I left university, and it's like, yo, I want to become my own man and stuff like that. And what happened when I left university? What happened, when I'm trying to face myself. When I face myself, I realized that there's a lot of things I was insecure about. There was a lot, including this deficiency. There was a lot of things I was insecure about, and the reason why it just came to me now, when I left university, was because when university or school, you're going there, you're mandatory going there to learn and stuff like that. In real life, all the choice, the world is yours. It's up to you to make the choices. And when I was entering the real world, there was basically only few basics, big choices that I have. Like, for example, the mate choice, my job, cars, and stuff. The real world stuff now that people value on made you choose. And what happened was that all those deficiencies that accumulated over those, going through the school process, it made me kind of question, like, wow, how would I be able to actually perform all those duties that a man has to do, to support myself? Because the thing was is that I was able to do it the 4 years in university, but when I reached in real life, I was a pretty lazy person. And if you listen to the podcast enough, you realize, no, I was a pretty lazy person. So it's like in doing it in real life on my own, where like, yo, I have no support. It was like, yo, to, it was really traumatizing. It was really traumatizing. I was like, it took me some time, but what happened was that boom, 4 years later, I'm still here. I'm doing not the best, but I'm doing better. I employed now of my own, own effort. Well, not really all my effort, but off of my knowledge and experience, and stuff like that. And I'm becoming a man in a way, doing a lot of stuff with my guidance and stuff like that. And it's like, yo, who would have thought? Who would have thought? Who would have thought? All these deficiencies that I accumulate over my life, eventually I reached a point where I thought, like, especially in 2020, it was that that sickness that I had no that it's like all of that. It made me feel like, wow, could I actually make it? Could I actually make it in it as far as I can? And somehow I did it. And what happened was that over time, those deficiencies is not the fact that they go away, but just that what happens is that over time, what I realized that is that you gain confidence in understanding the deficiencies and know how to deal with it. After you deal with it now, your next part is kind of, you know, the one thing that I realized that I had to actually understand my deficiency and really just accept it for myself. Then I can start, start with people in my domain. Because what happens is that, if the deficiency it's affecting you, and you basically try to bring put yourself out in the world and stuff like that. Over time, if you do not deal with it yourself, you will not actually um get to really experience life, because what happens is that you're living with a chip on your shoulder. You'll be like, oh my god, what if the deficiency really get to me now or the next day or stuff like that. Like, for example, so suppose you're diagnosed with a terminal illness. Like, yo, every day you have to really basically be be like, yo, I have to be taking my medicine and stuff like that. And it'd be like a chip on your shoulder every day. You wonder, like, oh my god, what if I'm going to die today? What if this is the last night I'm going to sleep? I've been through that. I've been through that. Not really terminal illness, but what happened was that when I was sick in 2020 with anemia, I was so paranoid, like I was going to die. I was so paranoid that I was going to die that I never slept for 3 days, because my thought was that if I slept, I would not wake up, and it took me around 3 days to actually sleep. But I eventually sleep, and when as I said, 2020 was really a traumatic year, a traumatic year, and the reason why that year was traumatic, not really for the pandemic and stuff like that. That was the traumatized. What happened was that 2020 was kind of traumatic was because I was having a self crisis, in the sense that I was not aware of who I wanted to be. So whole of 2020 was not me fighting a pandemic or something like that. It was fighting myself to see who I am becoming, who I want to become. What happened was that I made it 2023. I think that's the reason why I kind of make it 2023, because I was not really fighting the pandemic. I was just basically fighting myself, becoming who I wanted to be, and I reached here now. And what happened was that I have understand as to what happened is that what you realize that you learn to accept, and you learn to really accept your deficiency, and not be saying things like, oh yes, it's become my strength and stuff like that. No, it's that you when you fully understand it, you know how to actually make the best out of it. Make the best out of it. Like, for example, you know, I can do a lot of athletic stuff again. I can actually do it if I have the time. But yeah, what happens is that I won't overexert myself, because with the phase of my life, it just means reshifting my priorities so that I'm able to enjoy other hobbies. Now, one thing, going to school is that when I come to school, when they're going through school, when I go home, my parents or family that cooks or stuff like that, cook for us stuff. So when you go home, it's your family that basically, so all you have to worry about is doing your homework. When you finish your homework now, you have dinner, and then you can maybe watch TV and stuff like that. And when you're adult, all this stuff is on you. So you have to really take active self in take keeping yourself healthy. So you have to really do all of those stuff. And when you're doing those stuff, yeah, 24 hours in a day, and you realize that 24 hours is really really it really goes by when when you're taking the time to actually start out your life. You have to like when it clicks, that 24 hours can be just like when you're a kid again. And you just come home and be like, oh yes, dinner and then watch TV. But after when you're starting out, it's really gonna take some time for you to actively do that and become that person. You're gonna take some time. Yeah, but you have so this is person that have any kind of deficiencies, like you have to really understand it. You have to really understand it, and then, but no, back to the terminal illness stuff. Is that so? I never had that terminal illness, but what happened was that illness made me feel like I was going to die. But yeah, people that lives with terminal illness, like for example, when I was younger, I said I grew up during the AIDS pandemic and stuff like that. So when Michael Johnson got the AIDS virus, it was like, yo, it was like a death sentence. And on at the recording of this episode, that person is still alive. That person is still alive and living life. I was like, wow, bro. God. I was like, bro, that person is still alive and living life. Because what happened was that, it was shocking. And then he accepted its reality. Then he actually started take steps to actually take care of himself and say, okay, I'm going to actually fight this. And then you put it up all very long fight. So it's like you can't really not that. You can't really not that. So that's a great example of just if you want to look at it, say, okay, your deficiency, you can really work through it. And what happens is that, as he's taking his time to keep healthy and stuff like that, the world is still looking for a cure. So he just pushing on, holding on until maybe they find a cure, and then when you get the cure, he's been cured, and he would not be cured had he not stayed long. If you basically just give up and say, "Oh God, oh my God, it's a death sentence," then you would not live long enough to actually get the cure. And you can say, "Oh yes, I witnessed the cure for AIDS." But as I said, the thing about the deficiency is that when you're going through your life, things will happen. You will get cuts and bruises and stuff like that, and it will be traumatizing as hell. I can't deny that it will be traumatizing as hell. But if you make it out, you never, when you make it out, you'll be like, oh, you're going, it's going to be, I don't know, I can't even describe it. But once you make it out, you'll be like, yo, it's like, it's like a lesson, it's like a lesson. You'll be like, oh yes, but it's a butterscotch. But what happens is that there are various type of deficiency. There are people now without hands and arms and stuff like that. And so that's the reason for this episode. So I'm talking about my minor deficiencies that I was insecure about. But on my journey through life, I see people with real deficiencies. Like people with no hands, no foot got amputated, all those stuff, and they're still pushing through. And it's like and when they're pushing through, it really gave me some confidence. Be like, okay, not really confidence, but really give me some understanding. Like, they're still pushing through. I can't. They're still pushing through. My thoughts were just accept my. When I look at them and be like, yo, man, it's not bad as it. Man, it's not as bad as it thought it was. And just while it still may affect me, I just push through because what happened, seeing them, you realize like, yo, nobody will care about you more than yourself. So it's like you have to actually put in effort to actually care about yourself, put in the effort to actually understand the deficiency, and put in the effort to actually get your body up to the peak as it can. And what happens is that over time, those deficiencies can go away, but it won't go away unless you actively make the effort to say, okay, I'm going to understand this, and then learn how to actually push, get better. Yeah. So that's the thing about deficiency. You can make it with a deficiency, no matter what deficiency. As I've lived long enough to see people do it. You have to just actually learn about it and then do the right steps. Do the right steps. And the thing about it, you have to just not give in to peer pressure as well to do the right thing. And then what happens is that there's a time when so you're a student of the deficiency, then you become a master of it where you understand the deficiency and know how to keep going. But as I said, you that doesn't really prevent you from death. It just becomes that you're more pro at deal with it. So it's like, that as a deficiency is really complicated, but as I said, you can really make it. You can make it with your deficiency. I can't tell you that. You can make it with your deficiency. You just that you have to recognize it, understand what it is, and then put your active steps to actually start take care of yourself. And then what happen after you start putting the active steps to taking care of yourself, you have to actually prioritize your life. And then you understand that okay, your health is first. Then you start putting stuff. When you understand when you put your health first now, then you can start go out and pursue your dream because it don't make no sense to actually go pursue your dream with a bad health. You'll not last long. You'll not last long. So when your health is down and you have a deficiency, you have to just take a time to actually recover and understand the deficiency. Then when you fully understand it now, then it can be back on the scene and then just boom, start pursuing your dream because take the time to learn it. So yeah, that's my take on the deficiency stuff. Like yo, you can't really make it with the deficiency, bro. Yo, you can't really make it. It's like yeah. So that's basically for this episode. Thank you for listening and look forward for the next episode. Mhm.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page, Reframing Mindset Podcast, or on Twitter at ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.
Well, you know, good tools and bad tools. Because what happens is that, and I'm doing this 9 to 5 journey, what happened is that one thing that I realized was that, so I went there to actually practice my communication and stuff like that. And I practice how to talk to these people. But what happened was that, at some point, it was not me that is me bad at communicating. It was the tools. It was the tools, bro. So what happened was that some of the time the tools were so bad that I have to be actually actively going out to actually over communicate and stuff like that. And these are one of the things that I realized in that I said back to the business of science again. But I said executing. What happens is that, one of the things that I want, should happen is always we should able to have the highest quality things, quality things. Because one of the things that I realized in business, one of the things that I realized